sticks and canes were found in his tomb. Along with them were special stools used for shooting with a bow and arrow. No one fully understood why Tut was buried with these implements until a virtual autopsy was performed and the clubfoot was revealed.
तुमचं बीपी नियंत्रणात ठेवण्याचा प्रयत्न करताय. Naked Light, Tata Salt Light.
Relatively uneventful. During his time, the kingdom was involved in a few minor military campaigns against their enemy, the Hittites. Tut likely had no role in these battles, but he did probably play at least some role in reviving the worship of Amun and moving the capital of Egypt from Amarna back to Thebes. He also restored many places and temples that were destroyed in previous conflicts. Tut was only 9 when he took the throne, so he needed strong advisors to help him make decisions. Luckily, he had them. The first of his powerful deputies was Horemheb, the commander-in-chief of the Egyptian army. The second was Grand Vizier Ai, an old soldier turned counselor who many suspect was the true power behind the throne. The theory is bolstered by the fact that Ai directly succeeded Tut as pharaoh after his death. However, Ai only reigned for 4 years before he died as well. Ai was succeeded by Horemheb, who subsequently did everything in his power to erase Akhenaten, Tut, and Ai from the historical record. Maybe he was angry about being initially passed over for the promotion. Good management relies on good communication, everybody. It's timeless advice. Tut was married shortly after ascending to the throne. As was the family tradition, his bride was a relative, his own half-sister, Ankhesenamun. She is believed to have been a few years older than Tut, but in truth, little is known about her. Like Tut, she was a child of Akhenaten, and may have even been married to him. Her mother was likely Queen Nefertiti, who, if you recall, also might have been Tut's mom. For those of you keeping score, Tut's wife was definitely his half-sister, possibly his blood sister, and maybe his stepmom. But hey, family stuff, it's complicated. Among the other artifacts, Tut's tomb contained 2 small coffins, which held the mummified remains of 2 babies, daughters who were likely twins. DNA analysis confirms they were the children of Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun. Possibly due to inbreeding, one of the girls was found to have a severe spinal defect, and neither appeared to have been born alive. Theories as to why Tut died so young are a dime a dozen, and include everything from genetic abnormalities and diseases to outright murder. But a 2010 study found that the boy king probably perished from a malarial infection after he broke his leg. Elements of his genetics probably also had something to do with it, as they likely weakened his immune system, making him especially vulnerable to such conditions. Tut's brittle bones have led a number of experts to believe that he had been crushed, possibly in a chariot accident. However, a virtual autopsy conducted in 2014 found that most of the breaks occurred after the king was already in the afterlife. Possibilities include that the bones were broken during the embalming process, or even in the stages of excavating his tomb. Researchers also point out that Tut's severe physical deformities made it unlikely he would have been able to get into a chariot. After Tut was gone, Ai continued the reforms that the boy king had initiated. The country returned to its worship of Amun, and the cult of Aten was discarded. However, no good deed goes unpunished. When Ai's successor Horemheb took power, he took it all a step further and began to outright purge all references to Aten, Akhenaten, Tut, and Ai from Egyptian history and architecture. Temples and monuments that referenced Aten or any of the kings in his line were destroyed. The capital was moved from Thebes to Memphis. Tut was forgotten, and his burial site was built over. Horemheb's purge might have erased Tut from the memories of the ancients, but it also had an unintended consequence. Because the boy king was almost entirely forgotten by history and considered fairly insignificant, his tomb had been largely overlooked by looters. Other tombs had been discovered by other foreign expeditions, but none were nearly as well preserved as Tut's. This isn't to say the tomb was entirely untouched. The outer seal had been broken, and evidence showed it had been robbed at least twice in ancient times. Nonetheless, the sheer volume of artifacts was so massive, it took 8 years to empty the tomb and catalog it all. The idea that a person who disturbs an Egyptian tomb will suffer a curse didn't start with King Tut's tomb. Similar superstitions about other tombs date back at least to the 19th century. The massive publicity surrounding Howard Carter's 1922 discovery, however, made Tut's curse the most famous, especially when a number of Carter's team members died within a few years of finding the tomb. Skeptics point out that a dozen years after the tomb and sarcophagus were opened, 50 out of 58 of the people present were still alive. Moreover, most of those who died were either older or in high-risk professions. Of course, 100% of those people are dead today, so we can't rule out the possibility the curse just takes a long time. The discovery of Tut's tomb and the implied story of a young boy ascending to become the most powerful ruler of his time had a great allure in pop culture. As early as 1922, the same year the tomb was opened, imaginations already ran wild with Tut fever as the artifacts toured the world. But the strangest manifestation of the fad may be the buffoonish villain King Tut from the 1966 Batman series starring Adam West. Played by actor Victor Buono, this version of Tut was an adult Egyptologist who got hit on the head and became convinced he was the ancient Egyptian ruler. He tried taking over Gotham City, which brought him into conflict with Batman, who foiled the villain with some biffs, bams, and of course, pows. Maybe even a few kapows.
रात को बच्चे 12 मकर डिनर का बच्चा पनीर मटर गड़बड़ 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 गड़बड़
एसिडिटी की आपकी चटोरी पन के साथ गड़बड़ इनो ऑन गड़बड़ ऑन जियो लाइफ नॉन स्टॉप